Thank you, everyone. Welcome to the Portsmouth Conservation Commission September 2024 meeting. Before we get started, I'm sure everyone is aware that today is 9/11, and to honor and remember those who lost their lives on that awful day, I'd like everyone to join me in a moment of silence. Thank you. All right, let's begin our meeting. First item on the agenda is the approval of minutes. I was not at last month's meeting, so I don't have anything, nor will I vote on this.
I just noticed that I was marked present and I was not present. But I was also marked absent, so.
Oh, yes, you were.
You're both.
We weren't sure. Is everyone else accurately represented? Okay. Any other comments, edits? Would someone like to make a motion?
I like to make a motion to approve the minutes of the meeting from last month.
Second? Second. All in favor? Great, okay, thank you. Okay, next. Why do the approval minutes say July? Or those, did we
I
have?
think you're looking at the minutes.
Am I Oh, that I'm in the minutes from the, yeah, okay. Sorry. Nope, that was on me. Okay, next up is wetland conditional use permit application, old business for 100 Durgan Lane. Someone's here to speak to that application? I was in the minutes of last minutes. Yes, okay.
Good afternoon, Commissioners. I want to thank you again for the time and consideration as we are back here this evening to present the updates on 100 Durgan Lane. By way of just reintroduction, my name is Andrew Hayes, representing our ownership team. With me today is Keith Case from Utile Architects, John Boson, Nick Aceto from Aceto Landscape Architects, and Neil Hansen and Patrick Crimmins from Ty and Bond. I should note the presentation that you're seeing this evening conforms in all respects to the materials that were submitted on August 28th. As you can see, or as you may have already seen, we have worked hard over the last month to respond to the comments and the feedback that we received, and we're excited to review this with you today. You wouldn't mind slipping to the next slide? Before we get into the specifics of the plans, we wanted to just take a brief moment to review the program and the objectives of our proposal. The proposed project aims to provide a sensitively scaled development residential community in conformance with the base zoning of the G1 district. This includes 360 rental apartments with studios, 1 bedrooms, 2 bedrooms, and 3 bedroom units across a mix of 3 and 4 story buildings with 573 parking spaces. It is also our objective to provide a low impact development that improves upon the existing conditions with a significant reduction in the impervious surface, removal of access ways and vehicular ways, and parking within the buffer, as well as a restriction of pedestrian use within that buffer area, and the introduction of meaningful community green space within the site in conformance with the zoning. If you could go to slide 3, please. Since our initial site walk back in April, and I apologize, actually, if you wouldn't mind. Actually, no, it's fine. Since our initial site walk back in April, the proposed project has evolved significantly, due in large part to the feedback and conversations that we've had both with the Commission as well as with the city at the whole. We're excited about the changes that we've incorporated and where the site plan has ultimately landed, in spite of the numerous constraints that we have inherent to the site, which are shown on the screen here, which include, as you can see, the access ways, the overhead utility easement, and of course, the wetlands considerations. Next slide, please. Some of the most significant changes to the site plan, to the physical site plan, are highlighted in pink in the shading on the screen. These include removal of buildings and parking from the perimeter buffer, and we replace that with community space in the perimeter, removal of retaining walls, removal of an active stormwater management system in favor of a low-impact rain garden, and the preservation of existing rain gardens, and the removal of a previously proposed new rain garden by the Rotary. In addition to these items, we've also incorporated a number of more iterative changes that will contribute to the enhanced buffer. These include, as I mentioned earlier, restricting the use and access within the northern community space buffer, incorporating lighting controls and dimming throughout the site, adding additional trees in the buffer, removing community space from the northeast rain garden, and removing a previously proposed boardwalk and rain garden, as well as sidewalk along the northern buffer. Next slide, please. With all of these changes, the current plan represents a reduction in impervious surface of about 17,000 square feet, which is equivalent to about 30% of the impervious surface on the site that exists today. With that, I'll turn it over to Keith Case, who will present some of the more details about those enhancements within the buffer area.
Great, thank you. Next slide, please. So as we mentioned, the proposal is to create a sensitively scaled development that really, we'll talk more about this during the landscape portion, but seeks to be more in the spirit of the form-based code that Portsmouth has adopted. We think this as like a network of green spaces as much as possible, with interstitial green spaces, access to green spaces between the units, apart from the units, and visual access to areas that have been restored inside the wetland buffer, while at the same time, working around all the different easements and access requirements that are required across the site. This would essentially, excuse me. This results in a reduction of about 28% of the. Sorry. Right there, it's on the slide. Overall, a reduction of the impervious of 28% within the wetland buffer, and a reduction of the impervious landscape within the site. Next slide, please. It's also been an iterative process working with the fire department, DPW, and the Conservation Commission to fine-tune the vehicular and pedestrian access across the site. The main partee would be a strong axial connection of an extension of Durgan Lane coming off of Woodbury Avenue, and a north-south connector road that joins Motel 6 and Home Depot EMS and the developments to the south, plus the secondary and tertiary access throughout the site. And we've been working, with the commission to make sure that these roads, as much as possible, are pulled out of the wetland buffer, or where they remain in the wetland buffer are improved or not expanded as much as can be within a new development and repairs, et cetera. We didn't discuss it as thoroughly in the last meeting, but we've also worked with the Department of Public Works to right size and fine tune the location and sizing of the traffic circle at the entrance to the site to make sure that truck access and turning is not restricted. And we've provided an additional dedicated access to the Hampton Inn from two sides, which is surrounded on three sides by our site, in a way that's distinct and separate from the resident experience. Thank you. And I think with that, I'm going to turn over to Nick Aceto from Aceto Landscape.
Thank you, Keith. Nick Aceto with Aceto Landscape Architects. Pleased to be before you again this afternoon and review some of the changes that we've been able to make since July. We're really pleased to say that we've studied the access road connection to the northeast corner, and we've been able to pull that further south out of the wetland buffer. This diagram is intended to highlight the overall community space. The green areas are all the community space that we're tallying as required by the zoning. We're kind of distinguishing between two different types of community space. Internal to the site is more active space, as I mentioned last time we met. Kind of more formalized spaces. We work closely with the architect and the engineering team to form those spaces with the building massing and really create a series of outdoor rooms. Highly pedestrian-oriented connectivity throughout the site, and kind of more formal planting approach and spatial design approach interior to the site. Whereas along the edges, particularly as we focus up to the north, it's more passive community space that we're envisioning with a different treatment that I'll get into in the next couple of slides. But that would be more of a naturalistic planting with more bunch grasses, sedge grass, and native shrubs to kind of limit pedestrian access and create a transitional landscape to the wetland wooded edges. You can see on this diagram the magenta is highlighting a couple of the high-level changes that we're able to make. You can see that realigned access road up to the northeast corner. And then just beyond that to the right, the magenta is again highlighting the removal of the boardwalk across the former rain garden footprint, reducing the overall impact within the wetland buffer by approximately 5,000 square feet, I believe. And then also that rain garden space, the larger kind of magenta bubble being removed from our community space tally. Up further toward the top of the page, there's a magenta line that was formerly a bituminous sidewalk that we've removed, partially at the board's request to eliminate more impervious area and also eliminate kind of active spaces along that edge and kind of remove, again, active community space along those edges. And then further down toward the bottom of the page there, you can see another magenta bubble that we discussed last time a bit. That is a former stormwater BMP that we've been able to remove and relocate elsewhere. Next slide. So this diagram focuses a little bit more on the buffer spaces. You can see the green is the wooded wetlands that we've been very focused on. The dark reddish brown areas, the 0 to 25 foot setback. We have no impacts within that 0 to 25 foot setback. Beyond that, the slightly darker tan, the 25 to 50, we have very limited impacts. And then as you get into the larger 50 to 100 foot buffer, we are mainly, at least to the northerly edge, creating that transitional landscape and replanting. And as you can see on the next slide that we'll show in just a minute, we've been able to incorporate 20 more trees into that space at the board's request as well. This slide should also highlight the blue dash line that you can see kind of working from the top of the page out around the parking lot. That's the extent, just to highlight the extent of the wooden guardrail that we've incorporated in the design to limit pedestrian access into that buffer zone. And then again, that magenta line highlighting the removal of the last remaining pedestrian walkway there. And then you can see the two images on the left are just example images of kind of the planting character that we expect to see within that kind of light orange area within the buffer. Next slide. So a couple of vignettes, very similar to what we showed last time. Again, not a lot has really changed on our plan besides the realignment of that access road and reconfiguration of the rain garden. But this slide also shows the extents of and the character of the low guardrail that we're showing, the character of the planting being more bunch grasses, sedges, and native perennials and shrubs, and then also incorporating evergreens to really limit any kind of natural inclination anyone might have to kind of access that space. The intent there is kind of just quiet enjoyment, visual enjoyment, and protection of habitat and the resource. Just worth highlighting too, the images down in the lower left are showing existing conditions. Just by contrast today, highly pervious paved sea of asphalt out there today. So we think that we're doing a good job of restoring the natural conditions along that transitional edge. Next slide. And this should be my last slide. A couple of things to highlight here. This is the observation deck platform that we've envisioned. We could point that out more specifically where that's located on the plan, but essentially it's at the edge of the rain garden, kind of bookending the greenway community space that works its way kind of through the center of the site. This becomes kind of a terminus for that community space connection. We thought it'd be a really nice way to sort of celebrate the the habitat, the protection of natural resource, and kind of the water cycle function that we thought we could highlight with the interpretive signage. There's an example down to the lower left there. You can see that's a gravel wetland. This would not be a gravel wetland. This is a slightly different BMP feature, but similarly, that sign talks about the water cycle. It talks about plants and ecology, and how we're treating, detaining, and ultimately releasing stormwater, and using phytoremediation to remove pollutants and cool the water. So I think that covers landscape. With that, I'll hand it off to Patrick to talk about the engineering a bit more.
Thank you. Good afternoon, folks. Patrick Hermans with Ty and Bond. So the graphic that we have up on the screen right here to the left actually was a snapshot. There's been a lot of discussion through the months about this access road. So that snapshot to the left there was actually what we had showed at the last meeting, because we were trying to show that there was, an overall net improvement with that access, even designed as is. That was previously shown as like 4,400 square foot improvement of impervious surface in the buffer, but understanding the feedback that we got from the commission last month, it was very clear that we needed to make every effort possible to try to move that drive, and we did so successfully. So to the right, you'll see is the redesign of this drive. We were able to get all of that drive out of the buffer. We straightened the alignment. Now that little section right there, just that study area, is it's a 9,500 square foot improvement, reduction of impervious surface. We pulled the road out. The other win here is actually we were able to keep the low impact stormwater management design system rather than going to some sort of proprietary under unit. So it took some finagling in terms of modeling and grading, but I think we were able to successfully achieve what the commission was requesting at the last meeting. So we wanted to show the side-by-side comparison and show that was a overall significant improvement from even last month. Next slide, please. So I'm not going to read all of these bullets, but again, this is a similar slide. Actually, it is the same slide that we had showed last month in our presentation, just we've added some bullets at the bottom. But I think what's important here is you can see the effort that we've made through the process, listening to your feedback, listening to staff's feedback to just continuously try to improve the design, address feedback that you folks have all been constructively giving us through this process. And you can see right from the top there, starting back when we initially submitted all the way through to today, ultimately ending up with a 17,323 square foot reduction in impervious surface within the buffer, when our first submission back in April was actually a net increase of 4,000 square feet in the buffer. So overall, like a 21,000 square foot improvement from our initial design. Those April through June meetings, we worked to respond to feedback from you folks relative to active stormwater management, in favor of low impact. So we've added those rain gardens. We've preserved the existing rain gardens. We eliminated retaining walls. Nick went through it in that graphic that showed the pink, where we removed the buildings and the parking fields in the perimeter and replaced them with passive community space. Again, the next set of meetings, we continue to improve. We had shown that rain garden, which Nick had mentioned by the Rotary. We were able to redesign that to eliminate the rain garden. We've eliminated sidewalks along the north. And again, just continue to improve, leading us to August through September, and the design efforts that we've put forth over this past month in the package that you folks have. And again, just highlighting the removal of the northern access road from the buffer. In addition, we've incorporated, we'll be incorporating lighting controls for dimming capabilities. And as Nick described in more detail, we've added trees to the planted buffer. So next slide, please. So again, I'm not going to read all of these, or I'm not going to read any of these right now. But I just thought this would be a good slide to close on. We did listen to your feedback last month, folks, and we took notes. This is exactly what's been included in your cover letter to address more in detail in the technical package, which we think is pretty comprehensive in terms of what was asked of us in terms of addressing comments and providing the materials. So we just wanted to show this here. as a closing, and wanted to thank you all for the feedback through the process. And with that, what we want to do is close out the presentation and take any additional questions or clarifications to this past month's questions as well. Thank you.
Thank you, Patrick. Questions from the commissioners? I'll start. Not that many this time, which is great. I was looking at the snow storage areas that you had, and I'm not going to be able to find the map that shows them, but I noticed some of them were up against what looked like a row of trees that were planted, like right in between the parking lot and a row of trees, and it just didn't look like there was space there to put snow. Are you finding it?
Gonna try. It might be the utility plan. It was in the northeast corner, maybe.
I thought it was,
Sorry, this might take a
no,
second.
I thought it was down, yeah, well. Let me see if I can find it. Probably not.
Actually, I think we may have referenced specifically the snow removal plan in the responses. So that may be a helpful guide if you're looking for it.
Oh, gosh. Everything's
Let me see if I can find it.
Good afternoon, Neil Hansen with Time Bonds. So yeah, sheets 301 and 302 show the snow storage areas. We've done our best at this point to locate those in areas that don't interfere with the landscaping. If there's any specifics, and outside of the 100-foot buffer, if there's a specific area that you notice that we may have missed, we'd be certainly happy to clean that up.
Oh, yeah, it's that, oh, yeah,
right in here.
right, yeah.
So that area along there, we've interspersed it between the trees
Okay.
within the landscape perimeter buffer.
Yeah,
It may be helpful if we actually turn the trees on to the site plan and when we submit in the future, just to show that those.
it is in
aren't
between the
conflict-
trees.
yeah, it is,
Okay.
yeah.
I would just, yeah, be
That's the
mindful
intent
of.
anyway.
Yeah, being
you're right, it is
mindful
hard to.
of piling snow, like, obviously you want your trees to survive, so, and your
Exactly,
shrubs
yeah.
to survive, so,
Yeah, and we've done our best to try and find every little
Yeah.
available space that we can store snow.
and then the plan is that once those areas are full, then everything else gets moved off-site, is that correct?
That's correct. And there's a note alluding to that on the general note sheet, which is C101.
Okay. I had one other question. I love the interpretive signage that you had at the end of the overlook for the rain garden. Are there any other areas that you're proposing to do, additional kind of educational signage?
I believe that's the only area at this time.
Okay.
Yeah.
Would you be open to, like, I was considering kind of the passive recreation area, like one or two just along there, kind of talking more about the buffer
Sure.
as an option?
Yeah, I think that's a good idea.
Okay. Yeah, Barbara.
I was going to, in the beginning, I think it was on one of the first pages or introduction or whatever, you mentioned, first of all, thank you for all the changes. This has been great. This is really positive. You mentioned mowing the native grass area, and it said to be mowed as required to avoid invasive species or control it. And that's pretty broad, and we do find a lot of people are mowing frequently areas like that, and it's just ending up being kind of like grass, like manicured grass. So I'm wondering if there's flexibility, or if it's listed somewhere else where you might be mowing once or twice a year instead.
Yeah, we can specify in our maintenance plan the frequency of mowing. Typically, we found with seeded natural areas like that, it's the species that we put down perform best when they're mowed back once or twice a season, but they can be left to grow kind of wild as well. So.
Yeah, I mean, it's fine once or twice. It's just a lot of
Not
people will
regular,
read that
yeah.
and then just mow every time they mow everything else. So.
Sure. Yeah, we'll make sure we clarify that in the maintenance plan.
Thank you.
Yeah, go ahead, Brian.
First and foremost, I would thank you for the effort that you put into, I'm sure you heard our collective feedback. You've said that, and I think you know I was particularly expressive about that. So I'd say thank you to you all for, you had a slide up there that showed the months of effort that you've been working with us and taking our feedback constructively. And I'd just point out individually, certainly we have projects that come before us that at least I myself sometimes feel like we go out of our way to provide constructive feedback. We spend a lot of time, and it's not always as well received, and it's certainly not always acted upon. And I think you've done a fantastic job each time. And then we ask you for one more, and it wasn't lost on myself or the rest of the group that potentially was a substantial change. I'm sure it was, and you had to spend time rethinking it. So again, grateful for all of that and this very good last outcome. You understood that it was important to us because this is a significant opportunity, right? I don't know if it'll be across multiple decades or longer, but getting that to that point, I think, is a really valuable outcome. And so I'm pleased with that and want to give you that positive feedback. I just have one question there. I was happy to see it as soon as it popped up on the screen. When you went off and did that, were there any sort of consequences out of that? Clearly it had changed and you had to make design changes, but were there any unintended or consequences that now that you look at it you find are problematic and consistent in a substantial way with desired outcomes of the project? Just like to know what repercussions, if any, came from that.
Sure. Well, first and foremost, thank you for your comments. Certainly we appreciate all of the feedback and the process as it's run to date. The biggest concern that we had, and Patrick alluded to this, and I'll have him speak in greater detail to the technicals, was whether or not the shift in the rain garden would force us to go to an active stormwater management system. I think we were all very, very much pleased that we didn't actually need to go down that road. So the short answer is no, but I'll let Patrick speak in greater detail.
Okay. Thank you.
I mean, I don't have much to add beyond what Andrew stated. That the goal was to try and maintain that low-impact design rain garden as part of this. We felt it was an important feature for the site. So we were successfully able to do so, and we were able to do so with actually out pushing it further into the buffer.
Okay. Yeah,
so
that was
there's
another
actually,
question.
you can see that if you look, actually, if you go back, you don't have to bring it up, but if you're looking at those side-by-side graphics that I had previously shown, you can actually see that limit of impact. You can see that green there, where that goes through the buffer there, has not changed. And you can see up the top, obviously, where you eliminate that drive, we are eliminating a significant amount more of impervious surface that is closer to the buffer, and we were able to kind of gently slope that down. So it took some effort to model it and pipe it and stuff like that, but no, overall, it wasn't a further impact to the buffer.
That's great to hear. And again, thank you very much. I think that's a wonderful outcome, all in, that you were able to still achieve largely what you wanted and it didn't end up having substantial impact.
Agreed, and I appreciate the feedback. Thank you.
I just had some size questions on the platform, in the observation platform. Maybe it's in there how big it was. And then my other question is, where you guys have like rows of trees, I think, within the parking, kind of mingled in within the buildings, how much area that those are going to be growing on?
For the observation deck, there's a detail on L503. I don't know if you want to look at that.
Okay.
The deck, I want to estimate, is roughly 12 by 16.
Okay, thank you.
And then your other question is the space around some of the tree plantings.
Trees that might have limited space, there some near the parking lot and within the,
Yeah.
is that in there?
Yeah, there's the detail. For the space around the trees, yeah, we've sized and selected the trees and the species to fit the space. Is there an area that you want to talk about specifically?
Well, originally you had areas that were more within the development, kind of along the walkways and things like that. And I don't think you have a lot of that now, right? Most of it's on the outside, from what you have in the drawings and everything. I mean, there's a few places that.
Right. And I remember your comment specifically last time we talked a little bit about, I think your comment was the trees felt like they were kind of dappled a little bit randomly.
Yeah.
And so we've worked on being a little bit more intentional on clustering the trees into like massings and kind of drifts that feel a little bit more naturalistic and feel like they kind of create space a little bit better. So yeah, we've put a little more detail and focus into the tree planting.
Okay, that's great. Thank you.
Sure.
I had one more. So now that this area is, has more natural area or, more opportunity for connectivity a little bit within the site, I'm wondering about two places, the access roads, actually three, but coming in where you might be doing work on, or maybe not, but definitely on the access road coming in from Whole Foods area, whether or not you're going to have the straight curving there on both sides of that road, and if there's some flexibility on that, because I did see in the plans that you were going to be putting a lot of straight up curving rather than slanted curving. And I'm thinking of just that you've got two wetlands on either side of the road, and the same with the access area coming from the Motel 6 over there. Which you might not be doing any work on that at this point, but just for future planning.
With respect to the access from the Motel 6, it's really not changed because we don't have the ability to take it beyond our boundary. So I think that one addresses that. I think I see what you're speaking to, the rotary here and that edge. It's certainly something we could bring up with the Department of Public Works. It's their standard that we have to meet in terms of, because they're the ones who are going to be plowing this road. They're actually going to have an easement over this section so that they can come in and turn around. But if they're open to it, we could incorporate a sloped granite at this section where there is no sidewalk. You would need obviously a vertical granite where there's sidewalk to protect it. But we can raise the question with TAC. But again, we're just trying to design it to the Department of Public Works standards.
Right. Yeah, and sometimes in the past what they've done is, and you may be involved in some of the projects, is they just have breaks in it occasionally too, so that they're not really messing up with the plowing and the
Yes,
safety.
we could find a location possibly and work with them and to incorporate, some slope granite with some vertical granite transitions to allow for that so that the smaller wildlife have an opportunity to cross easily.
Okay, thank you.
Yep.
I have one more question. The outlet of the rain garden, has that changed now that the rain garden is sized differently? The location and, yeah.
Now that was again one of the surprises actually for us that we were able to kind of maintain this, not add impact, and we were able to keep that outlet in the same location as the previous design.
Okay, so that's it. That hasn't changed at all?
not.
Okay,
Yep.
thank you. There are no other questions? Yes? you have another question?
Sorry,
Go ahead, Barbara.
Sorry, Patrick, this might be for you, Patrick, but I just wanted to comment on the chloride management plan. I guess this is something that you had to put in because of Hodgson Brook being in Hodgson Brook's watershed? Or, thank you.
That is a DES alteration of terrain requirement for any project located within a chloride impaired watershed
water.
area, which this is located in.
So that would be something that you'd be submitting to the city and to DES?
There's no submission requirement with it. It just talks about how you manage essentially salt usage on site during winter months, and there's certain requirements that need to be met.
So it just sticks with the property no matter
Yep.
who's managing it, and
Yep.
it needs to be followed.
Yeah, and that's just straight from DES requirements.
Yeah, that's great, thank you. That's it.
Someone like to make a motion if there are no other questions?
I will make a motion that we recommend approval for 100 Durgan Lane with the following stipulations: that just the cutting plan for the passive landscape grass area is clarified, that there's a conversation with DPW about curbing, whether it's slanted curbing or gaps in it. And did anybody have anything else?
I had maybe an additional one or two pieces
yes.
of.
And the added educational signs maybe near the passive recreational area to talk about the wetland buffer.
And then there were two stipulations that city had, 3, which is plant success rate 80% if not reached, replanted or whatever.
Yep.
Yeah, I think that's our typical city one, is if 80% success of plantings isn't reached after a year, replanting is required. And a report is sent to our department.
And then our boundary markers.
I just was going to say for the specification on the native grass areas, maybe to specify one to two times a year.
A year.
That's okay. I will second.
Second. Any discussion?
No, I would also reiterate what has been said. Thank you for taking all of our questions and comments and considerations to heart and actually making an effort to protect our buffer a bit better and our wetlands. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you so much. I think that this could be beneficial to the development in the end as well. So I'm really excited about this project.
I just echo what everyone else has said. Thank you. I know it's been a long process. You've been here a lot of times. You've been with a lot of boards a lot of times. And I appreciate, the movement, how far we've come. All right, with that, are we ready for a vote? All in favor? Thank you.
Thank you very much again.
Thank you.
Thank you. We look forward to seeing the project.
Okay. Next on the agenda, we have the wetland conditional use permit application for 913 Sagamore Avenue. And then we also have the State Wetland Bureau application for the same project. So if, at the end of your presentation, if there's anything additional that you want to tell us for that, feel free. Thank you.
Good evening, Madam Chair, members of the commission. My name's John Ritchie. I'm here with my wife Heidi tonight. We're the owners of 913 Sagamore. What I'd like to do quickly is just give a recap from the January site walk to today, and then I'll turn it over to Steve Reicher, who's here with us tonight, as is John Shagnon with Haley Ward. So, okay, do you have the original colored up that we have? And I believe most of the board members were at the walkthrough in January, but I also want to thank the commission, Kate, the staff for the collaboration from January to today. So just to go back to January, we had a site visit. The original proposal was for a single story, which is highlighted in green, single story dwelling. And we met with the commission. There were 2 really nice oak trees that in this proposal were both going to be removed. So the commission said, is there a way that we could save one or both? So we took that into consideration, as well as the current application today, based upon the staff memorandum for last month, was enhance buffer plantings, reduce the footprint of the proposed dwelling. So could you go to the current layout, please? So we reduced the footprint from 3,000 square feet, single story, which is was our desire to have a single story home, and we reduced it down to roughly 1,800 square feet, 2-story. The mature oak on the east side is now to remain. The one on the west side, that was the smaller of the two. So we did save the oak on the east side. In addition, based on the staff memorandum, we've got a pretty intense buffer planting within the 25-foot wetland buffer, which does not exist today. I think today there's 3 trees in that 25-foot wetland buffer. In addition, we've added 10 trees outside the buffer, in addition to the wetland plantings. So that was what brought us from January to today. The overall project has a net decrease in impervious, along with a 25-foot buffer that does not exist today that we're excited about. We get to remove the driveway on that side that when you're on site, clearly in a heavy storm, the water goes down, there's erosion, silt's going in the creek. So that driveway gets removed. We take that gravel, the pavement, we remove it, we replace it all with loam and seed. So that erosion that exists today, if this project gets approved, will not occur in the future, which, Heidi and I are really happy about that. So that, I just want to give the recap of the single story to today, where we are. Again, I want to thank staff for the memorandum last month. We look to address most of those comments and questions, but I'm going to turn it over to Steve Riker now, who did the bulk of the heavy lifting on this, and he can go through his comments and plans. And
thank you. Thank you. Good afternoon. I'm Steve Riker here tonight, or today, on behalf of John and Heidi, Hogs Wave LLC. John hit the big points. I'll talk about some finer items here. As he mentioned, there's a single-family residence on the lot now. There's some very large, expansive, impervious areas in the form of gravel and pavements. There's an existing garage as well that's located pretty close to Sagamore Creek, and leading up to the doors of that garage is a large gravel driveway. In going through the project planning for this, I talked to John about removal of that area. John and Heidi were all about it, as well as some other areas that we could identify that could be removed. The large area of pavement that's on the eastern side of the property also will be removed. We reconfigured the driveway, which I know is outside of the 100-foot wetland buffer, but I think it's part of the whole project. So we're able to remove a little bit of impervious up near the top there, where it sort of connects and goes to the home that's at 912 Sagamore. Moving through the plan set, I just wanted to touch on a few things. We're proposing a deck on the rear of the proposed house. There's some gravel to be underlain underneath that deck. One of staff's comments was to increase the depth of that gravel or stone. It should actually be crushed stone. Certainly no issues with that. Happy to increase that depth to provide that stormwater percolation. Stone drip aprons are around the entire house to catch all runoff from the roof of this structure. Again, one of the staff comments was to specify the depth of that stone drip apron, and I believe our standard is typically 12 inches, and we'll detail that on our detail sheet for the stone drip apron. We did discuss, use of pervious paver for the driveway or some other pervious technology, but given the fact that there's a long gravel road that gets to this property as well as the abutting property, tracking dirt and finer materials off that onto the paver surface I'd probably just create a maintenance nightmare, and likely over time it wouldn't really perform as intended. So we did have to use gravel for some proposed driveway area, and unfortunately that had to stay that way. There is an existing retaining wall behind the home. That wall exists there now. It's in okay shape, but the property owner's wishes are to essentially replace it in kind. So we're proposing another retaining wall in almost the exact same location. One of the staff comments was defining the height. On the grading and utility plan, which is sheet C103, it's a little bit hard to see, but we do have top of wall elevations and bottom of wall elevations. So I did the math before the meeting, and if you start the furthest west portion near the garage, the wall is about 4 feet high in that location, and as you move easterly, it gets shorter in height to the very end where you can see the eastern terminal end. The top wall elevation is 13.4 and the bottom is 11.77, so it gets shorter in height as you move east. Just wanted to specify that, as that was one of the questions or comments. The other thing that we did was we provided a landscape plan, which is C-104, I believe. That landscape plan essentially fully vegetates the 25-foot vegetated buffer strip on this lot. The area behind the garage, between the garage and Sagamore Creek, the existing garage, is currently vegetated now. There's some trees over there. There's no reason to touch that or disturb that area. And the smaller area that you see on the eastern end of the property sort of butts up against an area that is also vegetated as well. So this landscape plan provides that vegetated buffer for the 25-foot per the City of Portsmouth ordinance. John also mentioned this, but in addition, we are proposing 10 other plantings outside of that 25-foot buffer, and they move all the way up to the north, almost to the side of the proposed garage. It's another 10 trees and shrubs. They're not small trees and they're not small shrubs. We wanted to make them, large and worthwhile. So, as far as planting other trees and shrubs, the garage is still used. John would like to use it in the future, so planting between the 25-foot buffer and the retaining wall that I just spoke about is really not desired, because he does still store things in that garage and needs that area to get things in and out.
So is that garage leaving at some point, or is it remaining for forever?
Yep, it's existing and it will remain.
Okay.
Good question. I should have mentioned that. One thing I also wanted to point out was on the impact area plan, which is really for DES, there was a staff comment about a lot of disturbance associated with this, and really most of that disturbance is removing impervious surfaces. For DES reasons, if you're going to be in there with a machine to remove a surface, it's impact, and that's why we've shown it. That's the yellow area, most of the yellow area that you see there inside the 100-foot buffer. The house itself requires extremely little grading. It's been designed to fit into the site. The grading and utility plan, which is sheet C-103, you can see there's a little bit of grading on the eastern side. Yeah, right there, it ties in through the walkway to the side of the house. And there's some very minor grading along the rear of the house to construct this. So the architect did a nice job of fitting it into the current landscape as it sits now. I did want to just go quickly through some of the staff comments, because it'll probably answer a lot of the questions that the commission's going to have. There were 13. They're numbered, and I'll just go through them in number. Some of them I've probably already spoken to, or John has, but number one is the applicant should consider additional depth of crushed stone under the deck. We agree. No problems with that. We're happy to edit the plan to show that. Number two was provide some details on how the retaining wall will be reconstructed. In terms of the actual physical construction itself, it would essentially be removed and demoed. The slope directly behind it would be cut back just slightly. The new retaining wall would be installed and constructed, and then the area behind that wall would be backfilled. Certainly that work would occur after the foundation is poured and it's framed. That would be step one. The landscape items, including the retaining wall, would come after that. Number 3, please update sheet C102 to be consistent with the new planting area. Yes, we agree. Certainly, we would do that. Note 1 on sheet C104 should be reworded to state plant species in the wetland and wetland buffer can only be substituted with approval from the city of Portsmouth. We have no issues with that. We would like to have a little bit of input in that too, if possible. The reason, I think, for most homeowners, in terms of, installing plantings to a scale such as this, is if we spec something on a plan and it's not available locally, it gives them an opportunity to use another species in its place. Note needs to be added to sheet C104 stating compliance with 2 sections of the ordinance. I believe those 2 sections speak to use of fertilizers.
Yep.
No issues
pesticides.
there. We're happy to add those notes. Also sort of related to that, I know that the city follows the NOFA standards, and I believe it might be on sheet C101. We've already, I believe, put it on there as a condition of approval, NOFA standards. It's on that plan. Number 6, install permanent wetland boundary markers. We'd be happy to show them on a plan, and we thought that 4 or 5 markers right along the 25-foot vegetated buffer strip would make perfect sense in this case. 7, the applicant should note on plans that the 2,718 square feet of gravel to remove what that will be replaced with. On the landscape plan, I believe it's the last note number 5. Sorry, I have a small sheet and my eyes are not getting any better these days. But I believe it says, impervious surface area to be removed as shown will be loamed and seeded unless otherwise noted.
Steve,
Yes.
I hate to derail you, but can I ask a question to that piece?
Sure.
If that's the stretch across the front of the house, well, the creek side of the house, correct?
Yes.
So is there intention, if that garage is staying, is there, do you plan to drive back there to access the garage? Like, that would be my concern, if you start loaming and seeding and then people are driving over it to get to the garage.
Yep,
I
maybe
just
John
don't
can
know how
speak
it will be,
to what he stores in there.
yeah, how it'll be used, like.
So the reason for the garage to stay, to answer your question, is we do have docks we rent. It's waterfront business. It's kind of sort of vegetated, grassy, sort of, kind of.
Saw from the pictures, yeah.
So basically, it's a drive-in, drive-out. We typically will turn, if it's a trailer, if it's pulling a boat out, we'll do that on the east side, and it's typically a straight in and straight out.
Okay.
So there's not a lot of turning in there. So it's not enough that it drains and it doesn't get wet, but it's kind of vegetated now, and it's not been an issue.
Okay.
So again, we don't really turn in there. We just back in, pull, and drive out. We turn outside of that on the east side.
Okay. Thank you.
Yes.
Item number 8, please provide information on the seed mix plans for the 2,500-foot buffer. I did get, and I think what Kate was driving at was you're looking for the composition of the seed mix. I do have that from Pearson Nurseries. Happy to provide a copy to the commission, but it looks like there's probably 20-plus species in that mix. Also happy to provide a different mix. If the commission has seen a mix in the past that they really like from a different vendor, we're happy to substitute that out. I think they're all great. They all seem to work well.
Is what you have proposed there like a wetland buffer mix or a conservation?
It's a riparian mix.
Okay.
Let's see. Please include depth of drip edge on the drip edge detail. I did speak to that earlier, and that the depth of the stone part will be 12 inches, and we will revise our detail sheet to reflect that. The grass seed mixture table on sheet 501. Yeah, so our detail sheet has some general erosion control notes, and those need to be revised just to match the seed mix that we're going to use so that they're consistent from sheet to sheet. Erosion control notes also are standard engineering erosion control notes. There is some language in there to a swale. We're not proposing any swales. That would be removed from the plans. Plant monitoring notes also on that sheet. I did submit a inspection and maintenance, stormwater inspection and maintenance plan too as part of the package, and I believe that really speaks to monitoring and or inspection in regards to plantings in the buffer planting area, and we would change the language on that plan to reflect what's in the stormwater inspection and maintenance plan. I think that's all I have at the moment, and I'm sure there's lots of questions. And a typo on that sheet.
Okay, thank you. Questions from the commissioners?
This is really just a basic understanding question. I don't know if this is working. What was the 1,800 feet that was mentioned at one point, or 1,800 square feet, sorry, in the very beginning?
Yeah, I think.
I didn't know what that was referencing. Because I don't see any building, like, structures that were that specific size.
I think John was speaking to 1,800 is the footprint of the the proposed home.
So
And when he was here when he was here last January, the proposed home was 3,000 square feet, so.
So do we just have the old proposal then here in front of us?
Yeah, it's in this set.
Or in all the ones that I have been referencing, maybe, am I looking at the wrong thing?
No, this isn't the new one.
I mean, you're talking about 2,900.
I just see 2,900.
Yeah, that's what I was seeing too.
And I didn't know, maybe if we just have the wrong one, or...
Is it the
You mean 2,900
the
proposed?
Footprint or the square footage
The
of the
footprint.
house?
The footprint that I see is 2,900, and I didn't know if the footprint was supposed to be 18, or...
That 2,900 includes a garage.
Okay,
The
so...
footprint of the house itself is roughly 1,860, but the garage adds it to 2,900.
Got you.
Which is outside the,
Yeah, okay.
That's correct. Yeah, I'm looking at the table now, yes.
Thank you for
Yep.
clarifying that.
Outside which buffer line? Outside the 100-foot
right, the
garages?
the garage that's being added to this new structure is outside the 100-foot buffer. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Okay. So what's in the 100-foot buffer of the footprint of the structure is the 1,800, is that?
I think,
Yes, it's,
like, maybe even a little less than 1,800?
yeah, it's 1729.
Okay.
Just to follow up to that, how does that compare with the original building? Not the original plan, but
So the original, or the existing structure that's there now is 754. That's a two-story.
just, yeah, that helps with perspective.
754 to 1,700.
Yeah, yeah. Thank you.
So it's still sizable increase.
A couple other things actually that I just thought about is John had mentioned that there is a gray water well on this property that handles discharge from the washer, the clothes washer inside the home. That would certainly be abandoned. Couple other things. I believe that John actually championed the water and sewer to come down the drive to service his home at 912, as well as this new proposed home would tie into that as well. So there's an existing leach field septic system as part of the existing home that's on this now, and that would be obviously abandoned, and this home would be serviced by municipal sewer in the future.
I have a question.
Yeah.
I was wondering if you could just kind of describe the process of deciding the placement of the building. It is still in the buffer and arguably smaller, but, you know, I go to that color-coded plan and I see that you are taking out a really big tree. And so given that there is space to kind of move more of the building out of the buffer, I'm just wondering why it's still, you know, you felt like you needed to remove that tree and still be in that same general vicinity.
So if you move it more to the north, there's probably a 42-inch oak that would be potentially compromised, as well as that knob of ledge would probably have to take out about 15 feet deep of that ledge. So the thought was, if there's a cellar hole that's there now with the existing house, if we just expanded it, to me, that's far more beneficial than moving everything out, digging a brand-new hole, losing a 42-inch tree, blasting ledge, and then you've got to fill in a cellar hole that's already there. We thought if we expanded on it, that's a far better solution than looking to move it north where you run into ledge, and there's another beautiful oak that's bigger than the two we're talking about. So that was our thought, was take the smallest one out, expand that cellar hole, not have to blast a lot of ledge. We thought it was a far better solution.
So it looked like the tree that's being impacted is actually larger than the one that's remaining. Is that not right? It said it's a 60 to 62 inch double trunk red oak.
I believe that is the smaller of the two. I never measured them, but
Yeah.
we left the tree on the east because we thought it was more substantial than the one on the west. And again, the one on the north is bigger than either the east or the west.
Okay, thank you.
Go ahead, Barbara.
Just to follow up to that question, so is there, it's so great that you guys moved have the garage behind it and you decreased a fair amount on the right side of the building. But is there opportunity to move that new addition, like the argument is the footprint and the ledge and everything, but is there an opportunity to keep the footprint the same size and move the bedrooms back? So, and I'm not saying that as in I'm suggesting this, I'm just wondering if that was something you thought about. And
We did think about it. And again, the original was the single level, and I understand, and Heidi and I both agree that this is a far better. That ledge, that big knob right below the proposed structure language, it's pretty substantial. That's actually one of the features we wanted to keep. We think it's great. So the way everything kind of fit in, we worked it. We did some ledge probes out there, and if you go to the west, you'll see there's another outcropping. Certainly to the north, there's an outcropping, and then if you go to the east, kind of where the existing driveway is now, there's a outcropping of ledge there. So no surprise that the original home was built where it was. It sits kind of in a saddle. If you move it to the west or go to the north, there's the impact of ledge, which certainly isn't insurmountable. We thought would just expand that existing 800 square foot building and build it in that saddle. So when the ledge probes came up and we did test pits out there, the final location was based on trying to minimize ledge removal.
thank you.
Can you talk about the 900 square foot, I guess, old driveway that's being removed? Is that getting regraded? Is it, I see like a few plantings in there, but is it mostly just going to be grassed? And how do you propose, having all that not run off when it's trying to grow?
Sure. You said 900. I think you're referring to the 714 section.
It's the driveway, the one that we're talking about that erodes and goes right into
Yes.
the creek, whatever that. I apologize if it's not the right.
Nope, that's fine. I just want to make sure
Okay.
we're talking about the same area.
To the right of the house if you're looking at it from the
Yep.
waterfront.
Yeah, so it's paved now. It's in rough shape. the plan would be to just simply remove it and then loam it and seed it. Certainly, there's some plantings in that area being proposed. There's 2 or 3 trees there that are pretty close to it. Well, 2, and then some at the top there. We felt like removing the impervious surface at the top as well as removing the impervious surface at the bottom would greatly improve that, even though that slope is somewhat steep. Your concern, I think, about getting vegetation established in that location is valid, and it may need some erosion control blanketing until grass grows in that location. But currently, it just runs right down that, and it just picks up speed on that asphalt. And I think without that asphalt there and some vegetation, it's going to slow it down a ton. And then at the bottom of the slope, there's going to be no impervious at the bottom either, and it'll just. We feel it's going to just completely slow it down to a point where the erosional force is gone. But John has been the lucky person to be tasked with fixing the erosion at the bottom of that slope, so he has a vested interest in making sure he doesn't have to do it anymore.
So right now, it's looking like it's really just all going to be grassed. Am I seeing any like shrubs or anything going in there?
Not at this time, and we're
Okay.
if that's a concern of the commission, we'd be happy to entertain more plantings in that location if that's what the commission wants to see.
Okay. My other concern, and this is kind of what Jess was talking about, is the removing all that gravel down at the bottom that leads to the existing garage. And I feel like that gravel is giving it kind of the hard-ish substrate it needs to be able to have that vehicular traffic. I am concerned, as I think she is too, about the vehicular traffic on something that doesn't have that substrate anymore, and whether that ultimately, when it does get flooded, is just kind of going to cause a rutting and erosion, and that, like, if it's going to be able to withstand. And I don't know what the commission thinks, but I maybe almost feel like keeping at least part of that as is. I don't know if it would just maintain that area more if it is still going to be used for vehicles.
That's my question too. I mean, Steve, you just mentioned that you would potentially be like that initial spot that you were talking about, the slope. I would love to see a bunch of bushes and things in there, but my understanding is the use of that space is that vehicles still travel down there to access the docks. So will there
No, the
not be
vehicles-
vehicles going past the house anymore?
No, the vehicles come from the other side.
Oh, the other side.
Yeah.
And then they'll still come down around front
Cor-
if need be to
Correct.
that
And
garage.
it may be unclear, but John and Heidi own the abutting parcel.
Right. So vehicles will still come down between the two houses.
No, they would use an area that you don't see in the plan.
That's already paved
that's-
and like maintained.
Correct. That's on
feel like I
the
need
property where they reside.
Yeah.
Yep. And
Okay.
we left a little gap there so that a vehicle could come in there. But I could talk to John and Heidi about, maybe a grass paved product that's designed and engineered specifically to be driven on, but also have grass planted on it.
Yeah. I mean, I
I
love
would
the idea.
rather gravel, not plastic.
Yeah.
It was my personal, I
mean,
know
I
a lot
love
of
the
those are like
idea.
plastic substrates.
Understood.
like-
Yeah.
I would rather, for kind of,
Ideally, it'd be great to move all the gravel, but I'm just concerned that it's going to actually maybe be worse.
that was my original question.
And I was just going to, I feel the same way. Because it's going to be so compacted with vehicles going on it, even if it's occasionally, it's going to definitely be an issue if now it's just soil and grass. In addition to that, I have photos of that totally underwater from the high tide during storm events, and it's like, so you're going to compromise, you're going to have vegetation there that's not going to like being underwater, salt water. So it seems like you might have a good thing going here because there's opportunities for water to infiltrate with the gravel, I'm assuming. I don't know, maybe it pools there the way it is now, but it seems
Yeah, I
like-
mean, the flood hazard line is on the plan, so yeah, I'm sure it is subject to flooding during certain
yeah, I
times.
saw
Yep.
it all the way up to the wall. So it's definitely,
Yeah, we were just trying to improve the site as much as possible with as much impervious surface removal as we could get. You know, if the commission wants to see it remain gravel, we're happy to do that. We'd still be in compliance with the shoreline rules as far as impervious surface coverages, I believe.
I think just thinking about its use and whatnot, you know, there's a large space there. There's probably room to do planting of some sort of grass or other plantings on either side of a kind of a lane, you know, an access lane, right? Because you know there is some other space in kind of the corners of that area. One question I have about that is just there is no plowing of that, right? Is there winter access to that shed, or does that ever get plowed, or?
We don't use it often in the winter. I think there might have been twice in 10 years that I've plowed that.
Okay.
But typically what's in there is in there for the winter.
Yep.
And with all due respect, the last few years we haven't had.
Yep.
You know, I was talking to Heidi, and maybe I do agree with the gravel piece. Would it make sense if we took the green plantings and brought it up to the north along the edge of the garage where it shows gravel now and increased that buffer by another 5 or 10 feet there, left it gravel? And, you know, we're all about, I met with Peter Britz years ago trying to see if we could get part of the road paved because of the erosion issues, and that led to all kinds of permitting thing and neighbors and detention basin. So I want to do what we want to do what's right. Ideally, I'd love to leave that gravel. It works today. And then we could increase the 25-foot up to the edge of the garage and gain another 8 feet by probably 50 feet of plantings, leave it gravel, and I think it's probably a win-win. So, again, we're open to working, and it's been great working the commission and Kate and Peter, so whatever's best is what we want to do.
Yeah, I mean, just a quick comment on that. More buffer is always better. So, you know, I do appreciate that.
To me, I think
Yep.
that would make sense. And again, we do use that garage quite a bit for moorings, for boats, for trailers. So again, increasing it up to the edge, I think that makes perfect sense. And that way there it keeps it accessible. So we own the property next door as well, that we're going to grant an easement to this property to give access down to the water, thereby allowing us to eliminate that 900 troublesome area that just so it's nice that we can leverage one to the other. So that would be the plan, is to grant an easement to this property that allow us to go on the 912 side, get rid of that, and if it's additional plantings we want to put in there, great. I'm all about whatever, more is better, so.
Other questions? Yeah, Barbara?
Also along those lines, that would be great with more plantings. I did see in the notes that you would be, I think, around the plantings, is there going to be like a native grasses or right around those at all?
Yes. Yeah, that was the seed mix I was speaking to earlier in the area that you see is green. Yep.
Okay, so the other part of that is the maintenance of that being the same as we talked about with the previous applicant, you know, once or twice a year, mowing is necessary, but not.
Sure. Yeah, we'd be happy to add that.
So if that could be in the notes.
Oh, thank you. Here, I'll let you look at those.
Oh, great, thanks.
That's a seed mix.
Yeah. And along that, somewhere in the notes, it did say, gosh, and there's so much here, replace mulch and topsoil, compost is needed? Is that going to, where is that going to be?
I think that's. Yeah, I mean, typically I guess maybe the word mulching is a bad word, but I mean, you do want to provide the plantings with, you know, a suitable soil so that they can survive. So I don't know how we reword that to make it sound differently, but yes, I mean, you're going to amend the soils probably in those locations to get those plants to grow. Particularly in this location, as we've been talking, it's pretty There's a lot of gravel there. There's a lot of stone. It's pretty compacted, almost right to the shoreline. So, to install that buffer planting area, some work is going to have to be done to facilitate that.
Yeah, like amending the soil. It's just maybe keeping the mulch out of that.
That's fine.
Because it's just going to smother everything. And I have one last question for you, I think. The height of the wall, you said at its highest point it would be 4 feet?
About 4.01, as a matter of fact, yeah.
What is the existing height now? Is that?
Oh, great question. I think it's, I don't know that we don't have spot grades on our existing conditions plan for that wall, but I would say it's the same height. We're not proposing any grading in that area, so we're not raising any grade, so I don't see any need for the wall to be any higher than what we're proposing. And there's photos in the DES app of it, and I would think it's about 4 feet tall now.
Maybe it's taller. It's tallest on the
West.
west side of it.
Yes.
So maybe the other side is taller. Looks like 3 feet. Okay, thank you.
Go ahead. Do you have a question, Jess?
I do.
Yeah.
And I'm sure it's in here and I just can't remember at the moment, but to Barbara's point that she made before, in the planting plan for what goes in that buffer, have you considered things that can tolerate, I've seen that area flooded at least twice so far this year, so, saltwater, standing in saltwater, those kinds of things to encourage survival rate and.
Yep. So the creeping juniper, the low push blueberry, and the northern bayberry are really
Okay.
the 3 plants going in that area, and they're all 3 are salt tolerant.
Okay, great,
Yep. We did consider that.
thank you.
There are no other questions? Would someone like to make a motion? And again, it can be for discussion purposes.
I don't know how detailed you want me to be, but at least for discussion purposes, I will make a motion to recommend approval of 9:15. No, what's
9:13.
9:13. Yeah, I don't know if you want me to get into the stipulations of all of this.
I think,
I don't know where people are at, what they want to discuss.
do we want to, I think that's something we probably need to discuss in the discussion. So does someone just want to second the motion of recommendation for approval at this point?
Second.
Talia? Okay. So discussion. There are a lot of stipulations in the staff memo. A lot of them were addressed verbally tonight. We did talk a lot about planting plans and the expansion of that 25-foot buffer. I also would like to see more plantings in that strip that's was paved that is to be removed, and trying to, have, whether it's those coir logs to help kind of maintain it as it grows, but I think maybe some more work needs to be done in that area. I don't know how such that I would maybe want to postpone. So a lot of more of this information that we heard tonight is physically on a plan for us to review one more time, but I don't know how the commission feels.
I think there's a substantial number of relatively small by themselves issues, but there's such a substantial number of them that it would probably be better to try and kind of have a much more complete plan set, just so we kind of have it all in one place and can move forward voting on something that's more complete.
Yeah, I agree. I think, the question about the gravel versus the loam in front, I think that needs to be clarified and sort of have a more defined plan in place before I would feel comfortable making a decision one way or another on this.
Maybe when we're thinking about square footage too, there's a few different like square footage allocations for the original building versus the current one. Like I think it's probably because of the deck is included in some and not others, but in some places it says 1,100 square feet was the original building. So I think to be fair, we should be like really taking into account the correct original size. And there's a difference between 714 and 1,100. So I don't know if that can be answered now, but at least if we're going forward, going to ask for a more finalized plan, maybe just having the total original number in the way you see is most accurate would be helpful to me. I think that's always really helpful. Yeah.
So if we do want to move forward with postponing, we'll have to change the motion, but I think, as Brian always points out, and Adam always points out, to clarify exactly what we need for them to do to come back.
My next point. That was going to be the next comment.
Yeah. So I think for one, it's all the stipulations in the staff memo, making sure that those are called out and specified either in maintenance plans or on the plans. I think two would be if we're going the route of the expanded 25-foot buffer and keeping kind of more the gravel drive lane to that existing garage, making sure that is accurately depicted on the plans. Did we have, I would like to see a more robust planting plan in the area where that 900 paved area, 714 square foot paved area to be removed. And looking at what needs to be done there to make sure that that vegetation is able to take hold before, being washed away or whatever, knowing that that is a significant slope. Does anyone else have any other things to add?
I guess I may be the only one saying this, but I guess if we're revisiting the plan set, I mean, it's at a phase in design where it seems like we're actually asking for a pretty good amount of square footage to be built in addition to what's already in the buffer. So if there's any reduction or reallocation that could be looked at, I guess I would love to see that.
Yeah, so considering any opportunity to reduce the impervious surface in the 100-foot buffer.
I mean, to that point, do any of the commissioners see any real showstoppers here? I mean, is that something that would really be a kind of hanging point? I know, if we look back to like our last meeting, we said, okay, we've done a lot of things, we've made all these improvements, we see something similar here.
Mm-hmm.
That was getting that road outside of a certain area. Are there any similar kind of things here that we need addressed? Or are these just really a lot of kind of small things that we just want to kind of have a more complete understanding of exactly what's happening? And those are the things that I think we just need to make sure we're clear in communication so that if we ask for another month, that we're clear in what we're saying we want.
Yeah, agreed.
And I think that's probably a commissioner by commissioner,
It doesn't, I'll jump in because I had the same thought on clarity there. In my view, there's not other large substantial issues as I listen to everything, and obviously everyone else will express their opinion, but I think it's, as you said, just capturing the many things that we talked about that were feedback and having those documented in a final view. So I myself don't feel like there's any showstoppers in the items that we discussed.
Yeah, and I was just going to add to a little bit what Alice was saying is I do feel like there might be opportunities to get it that west side of the building out of the so far forward and further back. And that said, if there could be a discussion about that a little bit more in detail, it's sort of, but recognizing too that, well, for the applicant to recognize that everything you're doing is really great, but what you're doing is really mitigating the impact so that you know, the more you do, the better, kind of, if it has to be staying in that area the way it is. Just consider that, too, when you come back.
Kate, could we pull up the, I think it's A3, like it just shows the, I can't think right now, the floor plan of the house.
Just a quick administrative point.
Yeah.
Should we perhaps ask Jess to propose removing the existing motion, because we're going into a lot of other details, and if that's the path that we're going to go, it seems like we ought to clarify that.
Yep.
And then focus on identifying, as Adam pointed out, the specific things that we'd like addressed coming back.
Yeah, so is that the path we do feel like we want to take, is postponement? Does anyone have strong feelings against that? Okay, so then, who made the motion?
I did. I will
wanna
rescind
remove-
my motion.
And you removed the second? Okay, so do you want to reissue your motion?
So I will make a motion that we postpone the application of 913 Sagamore Ave until the October meeting, asking that the applicant address formally within the plans so that it's acknowledged the 13 points brought out in the staff memo, as well as a more clarifying plan about the gravel drive in front of the house that will be accessed for vehicular traffic, as well as potentially some further planting, especially in that sloped section that is the impervious surface is to be removed, as well as just the consideration if there's any way that you can pull or limit more of the structure that is within the 100-foot buffer, and any other thing that I missed that the other commissioners would like to have considered or addressed.
Or even just pulling it, even if you can't get any more out of the 100-foot buffer, pulling it farther back from the
water.
From the water.
Yeah, I mean, if you look at this, I was curious to know, like, where the original structure was.
Should we get a second first
Sorry,
before we?
yeah.
No. Are we good? Yep.
I forgot.
Second?
Second.
Okay. All right. Go ahead.
Sorry.
No, go ahead, Dawn.
I was just curious to see where the original structure fit in, like, as far as the foundation goes and the ledge. It seems like there's some pretty large restrictions for moving it to the east or the west, but I didn't know what was north of it, or, yeah, I don't know.
So just have the applicant
That would be really helpful to me to see.
consider and address, yeah, potentially, not now, but for the future October meeting. Looking into that a little further and seeing if there's any opportunity to move it back or reconfigure. Yeah, Brian?
It feels, and I know he was about to stand up, it feels to me like if there's 2 or 3 perspectives that they still need to be considering moving back or moving a little bit further away, we ought to have a little bit more of that dialogue and hear a little bit more from the applicant, because it goes back to Adam's point. I kind of feel like that's squishy. And we've made the somewhat of a indicator that we don't see major issues, so we're setting a certain expectation there, and yet it feels like there's one that is of concern to several of us, which I think is just fine. So I myself would like to hear if there's viewpoints, openness, what the thoughts are on what's being asked about. Is there any opportunity to make any more movement? So we've sort of got a collective feel, and they can go off and have a feel for what the expectation is coming back in October.
Yeah, I'm okay with that, if you'd like to address.
Yeah, I just wanted to, there was a comment or a question about, relationship of the existing structure, compared to the proposed. If you look at the existing conditions plan, the existing structures, I think it was 6 feet. I don't have a full-scale plan in front of me where I can hand scale it, but I believe I had done this previously. It's about 6 feet away from that existing retaining wall. And if you look at the proposed, we've actually moved the face of the structure back from what exists now. I just wanted to point that out, that we have moved the face of it away some.
Like, are you?
And
are you
when we come
saying-
back, I can give you exact dimensions on
Are
that.
you saying like the edge of the current deck, the existing deck, you've moved further away from that, or from the actual foundation of the
Both,
house?
deck and the house are a little further away.
Everything's okay.
From the water. And I was using the retaining wall as my reference point for a measurement,
Okay.
because that location is not changing. I just wanted to add that.
I know this is time and labor and money, but what other applicants have done is sort of superimpose things. And I know that the applicant spoke a lot about ledge and that being a limiting factor. So for me, I think it would be helpful to sort of see those all in one space. Like, this is what's there, this is what's proposed, these are the ledge edges that are kind of limiting, just so that we can kind of have a better overall view of, I know you've done all this and you've considered all these things, but it's sort of hard to see in 6 different pictures and from conversation. And so if there was a way maybe to just show that more collectively in one thing, you know, like I said, like, I know you've talked about and considered a lot of these ideas already, so just being able to see, well, this is where the ledge limits us, and this is where this isn't a factor, and this is why we made these choices, that might be helpful for us to get a better understanding of your thought process and your process to this point in general. I don't know if other commissioners would agree or what their thoughts are, but.
I was actually referring to this color-coded one. It does have that superimposition on it. It is very helpful to see that kind of where the building sits in relation to the existing building.
For some reason, I had trouble.
I mean, it's fuzzy, but
Oh, yeah,
there.
you can see it under there.
Yeah, I mean, maybe it's kind of a conversation among us as well about how much is reasonable to feel good about expanding upon an already, a condition that's already kind of built in the buffer. And so I'm just sort of personally operating on kind of a gut feel about that, but I don't know, how others feel and what that means if, it's okay for this applicant, then how does that carry forward to others in the future?
That's exactly what I was thinking too. I mean, this is Portsmouth, right? We've seen quite a few tear downs and rebuild proposals, but they do very consistently, it seems like, shrink the footprint within the buffer. I mean, they're still like, lovely homes, or at least within, the most sensitive part of the buffer. And in this case, it's a little bit different, I think, because there's all these other benefits that you're doing simultaneously, and I just want to acknowledge that. You didn't actually emphasize it as much today, but like removing the leach field and doing the sewer connection and pulling out maybe some of the other underground stuff that's there, the driveway and so maybe it's that we need to zoom out and think about it a little bit more holistically, but it does feel like, what precedent are we sending here? Is it like you can get 50% bigger? Can you get 25% bigger? Can you not get any bigger, And maybe it's a deeper dive into the language of the ordinances. I don't know if Kate, if you have anything that you want to, is there anything in there? Like for the last one, I think there actually was something about a rebuild should be 20% better than the 20% reduction in impervious. There was like a little something in the ordinance language that they were pointing to as justification for not doing even better.
You're talking about Sagamore Grove?
Yeah. Well, for the Durgan land, there was they felt like they did the sufficient amount better reduction in the impervious area in the buffer. And in this case, yeah. Do you have any advice there?
I'll have to go back and look at that.
It's supposed to be a no net increase
Right.
in impervious, so they've met that because they do have a reduction of, I don't know what the number
The
is.
gravel driveway.
Because
I
there's the
think,
road and the
really big impact that was being removed.
And so I think also it's a little bit intentional that it's kind of ambiguous in the ordinance because it allows us to, look at each property individually and at each property's differences and try to come up with a plan that suits that the particular attributes of of that property.
Right.
So the whole, like, the percent, like, how much percentage bigger, I mean, if you did that, then you would always be tied to that.
Right. Yeah.
So it's hard, that's intentionally why it's that way, but it does make it, you don't have a number to fall back on too, which I understand I totally get that that's also frustrating when you're trying to make these decisions.
And this is just a whole nother thing, but it would be also good to know the existing height of the wall, just to know if it's being replaced in kind or if there are changes.
I think that, go ahead. I think he said that it was the same height.
Yeah, it doesn't look like it in the photos, so.
Oh, okay. Yeah, then.
I believe they are, but we'll verify that.
Yeah, go ahead, Brian.
Maybe just because we're all kind of looking and thinking out loud, and I myself, on the prior project, and these are obviously different projects, but on the prior project, as you know, I had a strong opinion that that was even a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity, and that we needed to push hard to do the right thing there, and I think they did a fantastic job. We've covered that ground. I myself, based on where this project is, and as someone commented, the various other positive things that are being achieved, and, you know, maybe it's not the 40% reduction that we would like, it doesn't, I'm not as emphatic about the need to push very hard to reduce that, but I understand the point. So I'm trying to throw that out there to see how others feel relative to that, so that we're communicating the right next step and thoughts.
I'd agree with you. You know, when we first saw the diagram in January of what they were originally kind of proposing, I know it was a very approximate thing. My immediate reaction was, that seems too big.
Yeah.
And I didn't have, but we also at that point didn't see all the other things that they were doing, and now seeing this depiction of it and seeing all the other things that they're doing, I didn't have that immediate reaction. Just that's how I felt about it. If we're kind of trying to figure out how to look at it,
Yeah, definitely an
but
improvement.
it's personal for sure.
Yeah, I look at this one too, and you know, the site conditions here do play a role into kind of where you can site a home here, and you know, a home of that size is not, you know, necessarily completely unreasonable given the size of the lot and all that, right? If this were a home being built away from the waterfront in any place in Portsmouth, you wouldn't say, oh my gosh, this is too much for this lot, or, you know, this property can't support that. So combining that with, you know, all of the restoration of the shoreline and elimination of a leach field along the creek, which is, I think, a pretty big benefit. You know, I think my opinion on this one is that it's a pretty good proposal. I would certainly favor it, you know, given all the stipulations that we've talked about once they're incorporated.
I just want to add that you're getting definitely a very contemplative Conservation Commission tonight, and getting a lot of information, and I think it might just come down to, we might not all vote the same, but you have a lot of information here, so I think everybody's been really generous with their thoughts and thinking about this.
Maybe because we don't have like a mega list to go through tonight.
Yeah, that's true. Our agenda's a little short.
Sorry.
If there's no further discussion, would we, we're missing,
Stuart.
So Stuart left. Brian, would you vote? Okay, so are we ready for a vote? So this is for postponement to next month's meeting with everything we've talked about. So all in favor? Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you, appreciate it.
All right.
Well, do we have to vote to go over?
Oh, wait,
5:30?
we also have do we have to vote on the DES one too then, probably, to postpone that?
Or that was a draft?
Draft, so we technically don't have to vote
Okay.
postpone.
Yeah, it hasn't been submitted yet.
Okay.
We're going to work through this process. There's no sense in submitting that and then having to revise plans for that application when they're really going to be the same set of plans, so
Okay, we're good to go then.
I believe so.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Do we vote for 5:30 continuance, or is it 6 o'clock?
I think it's 6 o'clock. Is it 6 o'clock? Okay, so then all we have left is other business. Is that you, Kate?
Oh, it can be all of us, I guess.
Hooray! Hooray! Congratulations. We got it through city council.
Yeah, huge success, smashing success. They voted to expend up to $1 million, which is word for word what we recommended, along with some grant. I forget what it's called, but
The L-chip.
well, so our deputy city attorney Trevor McCourt drafted some grant agreement language between the city and CELT, I believe, if Peter wants to correct me, but that just further specified what the Conservation Commission really was looking for, with that ability to go in and have the right to purchase the fee if CELT cannot do so, and take over monitoring if CELT cannot do so, and added some other language just in the interest of the city acquiring the easement and the fee in the future.
And it was a unanimous vote.
And it was unanimous.
Yeah,
It's huge.
I was going to say, I didn't get to attend, but as I told you, I communicated with all the counselors and let them know my thoughts and points, and I received feedback and some dialogue from all of them, and I was pleased to see that they were both very supportive, but the mayor pointed out that we needed to understand the legal structure more closely. So all the right things were considered, but they definitely recognized that for sure is a once in a lifetime, I think, probably opportunity. And I was really pleased to see them understand and appreciate that. And then we posted that to the community on that Facebook page, that has a good audience, and there was lots of very positive feedback. And when I posted again that it had been approved, there was a lot of, so there was community support. I watched the video later on and saw the support. So yeah, bravo that the council supported that with a very solid understanding of what they were doing.
Yeah, and I encourage, if you didn't watch the video of it, that second meeting when they talked about, well, with all the people that came in and spoke, Talia, you were there then, and other people had come in the time before, but there were a lot of, like, the general public residents that got up and spoke, and neighbor people that really were very eloquent. And I just wanted to also say, in addition to that, if anybody, they still have to fundraise for the rest of it. So people are in support of it. Keep that in mind.
Yeah.
Do you know? Oh, never mind. Actually, never mind. I was going to say something.
What, do we know what next steps? I mean, I
Yeah,
know they
that's-
have to fundraise, but is there a date on the purchase and sale? Like what's
Next June, I think it
Yeah,
was.
I think it's
June?
a-
Okay,
yeah.
I couldn't remember.
Next year. It sounded like, but I think the real rush for August, September was to get our support for their L-chip application,
Right.
which I think is being reviewed now or next month, but
Our support with a dollar amount attached to it.
originally, yeah, so
Right.
it helped to
Much
have the
better.
dollar amount, but we already gave them our support with that
Yeah.
vote at our work session in July, so this probably just beefs their L-chip application to see that we're gonna also financially contribute. But also, just want to shout out Brian. I saw every single post you made on social media, and it was fantastic.
Yeah.
I do not have the social
Thanks,
media width that you do, and I was like,
That was largely, I think,
every day. It was
Barb
great.
and
Yeah.
Sam, and they did a tremendous job in there. I saw your communication, your speech. I was clapping as I was listening to it. No, it's really, I know we all feel that, but it's I was thinking about it, and I don't think it's an overstatement that both for the council in their role and also the commission, this is probably really like one of the proudest moments.
I know. It's monumental.
Not all commissions, get to make decisions that impact, so I'm proud to be able to be part of that.
Yeah.
We'll look forward to the documentary. I don't know if everyone's seen
Yeah.
the documentary, but
Yeah, the
once
documentary on
it's
this.
there, there'll be a documentary.
Yeah.
Maybe some of those words will be in it. So.
There you go.
You'll be the background voice, Brian, the narrator.
I think a good team effort is the point.
Definitely. Thanks, Brian, for doing it.
Yeah. Cool. Anything else?
I have something else. You have something else?
It'll be really quick.
No, go ahead. Mine's
Oh, I was just going to give, not really sad, but sad update about the Great Bog Footbridge that I proposed last month with the Student Conservation Association. We decided that we couldn't make it in time to do the project and get DES permitting because it's prime wetland out there. So it would probably, if we would get any approvals, it would probably be a couple weeks after when the Student Conservation Association was available. So we're gonna try for next year. That's the
It's not sad.
that's the
It's just postponed.
the conclusion. So we'll start in the fall, so we can start hopefully by summer, maybe spring next year. That's my update.
Mine is only, I don't know if anybody else has anything at all.
I don't know if this is appropriate, but is there time in one of our meetings on a lighter agenda to look at some of the pieces of the climate action plan that might be applicable for us when we are reviewing our applications?
Yeah, it's a fantastic idea.
Yeah. So that we are starting to incorporate that and make sure applicants are aware.
How would that look like the highlighted, the parts that we should reference when we're looking at applications?
Yeah, I mean, I feel like, I don't know, I would
All the different
sort of need your
pathways.
support in that case. Yeah, like what pieces are most relevant that maybe we should be highlighting as a conservation commission, because I'm sure we could speak to a bunch of it, but what's sort of.
I think the majority that apply to us are the land use category ones,
Right.
but also a lot of the other ones, like buildings and
Right.
sustainability and energy efficiency and all that stuff. So there's
Maybe
something like
that's somebody, and I'm not saying I won't help to be this somebody, but maybe there needs to be some people who kind of do a little, what's our ordinance and what's our goal and how does that
And have a little fact sheet
intersect?
for us.
Yeah.
That would certainly facilitate a more efficient discussion here.
Yeah.
Definitely.
I can volunteer as tribute for that.
I can help you with that.
Maybe
Yeah.
we just have maybe half an hour or an hour set aside to just side by side see the highlights.
Yeah.
And I can send something around a couple weeks beforehand or a week beforehand.
Yeah.
For everyone to review.
Yeah, that might
Get
be
to
helpful.
speed. That'd be great.
On a completely different front that won't keep us, if my eyes look a little glazed over, I was here until 12:45 last night with the city clerk. With the,
Counting?
yeah, counting votes.
Oh.
So I'm back
Thank
here
you for
in
your
however many
service.
less hours. It seemed odd when I walked in. I'm like, I just walked out of here.
Slipped over there in the corner.
That Kelly and her team do a phenomenal job. That's a very difficult, detailed thing. So another part of the
Yeah.
city that does a fantastic job.
That's cool. Cool. Thanks, Brian. Yeah.
And there's a whole group of people.
All right, Barbara, what's your thing?
I think it's just, when Allison left, she gave me all of her publications and notes and things like that she had. And so I have a bunch of publications here if people want to look through them. They're like hard copies of things that you probably have electronically. The Pula study, there's a hard copy of that. I don't know if everybody has that. Anybody wants that? Hodge Brook Watershed Management Plan, there's a bunch of things here. So I can just leave them out down at the end and people can take what they want. And that's great. Need anything for work or
Sure.
what?
Can't believe she didn't want them. It's like her life's
She
work
totally
right there.
purged everything at that
Yeah,
house.
yeah.
She left a couple of pieces of wood or something. That was it. So, but
So, anybody else? No? Okay. Good. Motion to adjourn? All set.
Cool.